Hi, Carol. I don't know if you can hear me, but could you turn on the microphones? This is Emmy.
No, Emmy. No, forget it.
Thank you.
Are they on? Can we start?
You can hear us now, Emmy?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
We're recording?
Yep, it is. It is. I didn't hear it.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone to the first Parks Board meeting of 2025. It's great to have our new members here. We currently don't have our chair or vice chair because both of them went to different boards and committees. So I'll start the meeting off, and we'll get to the I think we'll skip to the second part of the agenda, which is elect a chair and a vice chair, so that we can then open up call the meeting to order and determine a quorum and all that good stuff, and then get going. Maybe first off, a quick round of introductions maybe is in order, so that when you're voting on a chair or vice chair, you might have a little bit of understanding of who you're voting for. Yeah, exactly. So I'll just introduce myself, Scott Woodford. I'm the Community Development Director for the city. I'm, in addition to some of the other staff members, kind of the staff liaison to the committee. So you'll get packets from me. Sometimes you'll see the Public Works Director here for other issues, because they're the ones that actually are the experts on the actual parks themselves, and they're the ones that manage it. So they'll be involved from time to time. So to my right is our Councilor Ross, is our Councilor Liaison to the Parks Board. Ready for another year?
I am, and I'd like to thank those of you who are new for volunteering to work with us on this. And it's an important committee. I think a lot of people don't realize how much goes on within the parks side of things. And I just frankly love seeing folks in the community want to show up and do this kind of work. Thank you for being here. I'm a non-voting member. I'm here to provide direction or advice if necessary, and the rest of the time I'll try to be quiet.
I'm Nancy Conley. I'm finishing or starting a second term on the Park Advisory Board. I've been involved with the parks for 10 years. I was a prior city councilor, so that's the long leg time. And when you speak, there's a little button you have to push for the red light to come on.
Yeah, good point.
Hi, I'm Emily Coonrod. I've been on the Parks Advisory Board, I think a little over a year now. And I've been in Sisters for over 2 years. So I'm still relatively new to the community, but it's been super fun to be on this board and see what's going on and have that behind the scenes look. So I'm looking forward to this coming calendar year.
My name is Joshua Smith. I own the Paper Place in Town, small business owner. I've got 2 kids in the schools right now, so truly interested in the parks space, but I have not served on the Parks Board yet, so this will be my first term and I'm excited.
Hey, I'm Laura Lease. I am local mom and manage the kids department at the Plina Springs Bookstore. And my first term on this board, I'm very excited to be involved and looking forward to learning a lot.
There it is. Hi, I'm Matt McClellan. Yeah, still Matt McClellan. I'm a teacher at Sisters Middle School. Started full time there this past school year. Relatively new to Sisters permanently, but my wife grew up here, so went through all the schools. So been living here for 2/3 of her life. So I'm excited to be more actively involved in the community outside just the school building. So thank you.
I'm Asa Sarver. This is my second term on the Parks Board, and I'm glad to be back. And I'm also on the school board, which is part of the reason I wanted to be on the Parks Board, is that connection with what the city's doing and what the school's doing is very important, especially when it comes to green space, and the school district being the largest landowner of green space, and then the city being the second. Yeah, I have 2 kids in Sisters Elementary, and I love it here.
I'm Rebecca Green, and I usually don't attend these meetings, but I'm here because I have a staff report today. I'm the deputy recorder and work to support council at their meetings.
Okay, so guess we'll go on with the election of the chair. Just look for somebody to make a nomination of somebody, and I guess we'll need a second, and we could have multiple nominations if we need to, but I guess I would throw it out there for anybody who want to make a nomination. I guess he's got to accept too, maybe.
Actually, I would do it for sure.
Is there a second on that one?
Second the nomination.
Are there any other nominations? We have one commissioner, Doug Bill, who couldn't make it here tonight, so that's the other sitting member, returning member. Okay, do we want to take a vote? All in favor of Asa, I get to do this. Asa being the chair, say aye.
Aye.
Nay? Hearing none. Congratulations, Asa.
Oh, thank
Congratulations,
you.
Asa.
And so the chair's responsibility is just basically running the
Run
meeting.
this meeting, right?
Running the
yeah.
meeting and basically helping staff with setting the agenda for the meetings. And so we need a vice chair too. So when those times that Ace is not here, somebody could fill in for him. So
Sure, we need, wouldn't somebody, well, you can self-nominate too, just throwing it out there if somebody would like to be vice chair. Or if you want to nominate somebody, please speak up.
I'll accept as long as you promise to make 99.9% of the meeting.
We don't have one next month, right?
yeah, we do.
We
Oh,
do.
Yeah,
I won't
we're gonna-
make next month.
Okay.
I'm
Oh,
going
already
to,
starting off with a
Nepal.
absence.
Paul?
Nepal. I'm
These
going
weeks
to
in
base
advance.
camp of Nepal next
Okay.
month.
Yeah.
Weak excuse.
That's a
I'll
fa-
try. I'll try to zoom in, okay? But that's the only one I know.
A point of information from the previous meeting last year with the old committee, because we're looking at naming the park
Right.
at the other end of town. The decision was made by that group to meet monthly until, because there's a very tight timeline.
Correct.
And that this committee would serve as the subcommittee rather than picking a group of people out. So that's why there's a meeting next month as well. Typically, when there's not a lot on the agenda, this group meets every other.
Month, right. That's right. I forgot about that. So sorry, you'd have to run the meeting
Okay.
next month.
If time to prepare.
Does anyone else want to nominate anyone else for vice chair?
I was gonna say Doug's
Well,
gone.
then let's go to vote. All in favor of Nancy being the vice chair, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous and congratulations.
Thank
And we'll move on to visitor
Why
communication.
don't you officially go back to number one, if you wouldn't mind, on the
Oh,
agenda?
call-
Call this meeting to order now.
So I call this meeting to order at, well, I guess it was at 4:00, but 4:10, 4:12. We have a quorum. Would somebody like to vote to adopt the agenda?
Or make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Yes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. And we've already done number 2, so we'll move on to visitor communication, which we have no visitors. So we can move on to approval of minutes, which we have none, so that was easy. And then presentation on the East Portal Transit Hub naming process. So is that online here?
Just me.
Just you. Who's
Mhm.
online?
Everyone's online.
Who is?
Emmy Shoop.
Okay, just you. You're in charge.
Yeah.
Please tell us about the naming process.
Okay, so as Gary said, last month I came to you, most of you, or some of you, you as a board, to begin this process of renaming the East Portal Mobility Hub. And you may have had a chance to, for those of you who are just coming on, to look through the materials from last meeting, which sort of outlined the process and which began with our setting a policy internally at the city of how we are going to name city assets. And so parks are one of them, is a city asset and is, part of that policy. And this is the first effort under that policy. So we'll find our way as we move forward. The policy is pretty clear, but it's worth looking at as well as we go through this process, because it provides opportunities that I may not be saying, but you may pick up on or something like that. So be sure to take a look at that. And then, are you all familiar with the property that we're talking about? Good. And that's been sort of on the city's planning for a while. It was a city council goal in 2019 to really move forward with creating a transportation hub. And so there's been a series of steps that have taken us closer to that, including purchasing the property in 2022 and coming up with a master plan of what that might look like, and securing some funding for it. And we're in the middle of construction right now. And it's being held up by winter, as usual, but we'll move rather quickly. And that's why there's a little bit of an accelerated process for this renaming, because we want to be able to have a name on a sign when they go to open it. And as Gary indicated, when I came to you at the last meeting, I came with the idea that we would form a subcommittee because of the timing, and you meet every other month, and it was at the time right before the holidays. And that subcommittee could meet and do the initial groundwork and then bring those results back to the bigger committee. But the entire board felt strongly that everyone wanted to do it and to be a part of the whole process, and was willing to have these extra meetings, today being an extra meeting. Right? And next February being an extra meeting.
February will
Um,
be the next normal.
The next
scheduled meeting.
normal.
Then you've got a March meeting.
And then
which
we already have a March meeting scheduled.
February 29th meeting according to this too.
So some of
Live
that
Zoom.
has changed from the first,
Okay.
from the first rendition of this. That has changed. So the staff report for today should be the updated schedule. We can look at that really quickly. That has today's meeting, which is, we're going to work on developing a short list of names. I don't know how that's going to turn out, but we're going to get started in this process of, okay, what should we name it and why? We'll talk more about that. And then at the next meeting, we can do that over 2 meetings if we need to. The idea being, we want to finalize a short list of names that we're going to put out to the community in the form of an online survey, and they'll provide feedback to you as a group. I'll compile those results and bring those to the March meeting. And at that March meeting, I'm hoping you will come to the final list that you want to present to council. You want to have presented to council for their April 9th meeting, with the hope that they'll finalize a name at that point. And then we can start making signs. There's a lot of ways this can look different as we move forward, and that's okay. We'll just do it as it comes. Any questions so far about any of that? That all seems good. Yeah. You have to hold it for like
Yeah,
2 seconds.
Where
and
can
then-
we find the revised calendar? I was working on paper.
Oh, it should be the first page of the
the
staff
first page.
report. Hmm.
I
Yeah.
I didn't know it.
It's just this little list right here.
It says.
Do you see it? Okay. Um, so, at the last meeting, besides the naming policy, there was a indication of the process that I outlined for you just now. So there's that. There was a little bit of background to the property itself. And I'm sure you've had a chance to read that, but the idea that here's this spot right between these passes. And historically, that's always been like, phew, we made it over the pass, we're still alive, now what? And sort of a resting spot, a place to regroup, a place to meet before heading off into other directions. And, in a way, this is how Sisters itself was born, right? Is really this gateway between the western side over the mountains and everything, which is most of Oregon on the east, and points beyond, right? People coming from lots of different places. And so I won't go too much further into that. And then as part of a further refinement of thoughts for this meeting, I put together some parameters for this discussion. So for example, we'd have determined, according to our policy, there are certain parameters for naming that property or certain properties after people, for example. And because, you're still breathing. Yeah. Um, and there are no significant individuals that are related to that property, and that's another criteria. And so and there was some direction from city council that they really would like it to be identifiable, a name that's identifiable, not something just, um, chosen because you like the words or something like that, but something that says something about Sisters, about the property. And then also is identifiable as a transportation hub, as a place where, people can take the bus, where you can park your car, where you can charge your electric cars, where you can meet and take your bike out, with your bike group and go biking, where there might be companies that, meet there to take you up into the mountains or go snowshoeing. And so um, there, if you had a chance to look at the master plan, it includes all of those things. Just parking, it includes the bus stop, will be designed, it is designed for large vehicles. So the big buses, the big vans can all utilize that space. And as you probably know, there's a bathroom there, just, that helps for its use. And what else is there?
Dog park,
What is it?
temporary dog park.
Oh, yep. And there'll be is it right now a dog park or not yet? Okay, but there's a labyrinth there. And part of it,
But not really.
yeah, right. Yeah, it's part of it is officially, the reason why it's called the East Portal is because it's the east portal of the McKinsey Santiam Scenic Bypass. Right. Not
Salem.
named in that way.
Oh,
Past the ranger station, but there's nothing called the West Portal signage or anything like that.
So if you've been there, you can see that some a local artist has put a rendering of this idea of being a scenic byway and what you can find in this area, and that's all there too, and that's going to stay there. So that might influence your thinking and in that too. Um,
Quick question.
Mhm.
You mentioned, it shouldn't be named after a person,
mhm.
but in here, that's, the guidelines say it can be named after a person very carefully.
Yeah.
So
Um,
I just wanted to ask.
Sure.
Because,
yeah, let's go to that
and
area.
I'm not suggesting that it needs to be,
No, no,
I
let's-
just want to understand the guidelines.
Mhm. So should be done carefully and deliberately, such as, except it should not, it shouldn't be named for living individuals and except in extraordinary circumstances. So something that really makes sense, right? Um, verification of individuals made significant community contribution, and no submission of a, until the person has been deceased for at least 2 years and meets the proposal. Okay, so those are the parameters for general naming of any city assets. And then in the research for this property, um, so two things. One is for the research of this property, no individuals have been associated with that piece of
Directly,
land directly. Yeah. And that's the intent behind naming it after somebody. I mean, there could be circumstances where you would want to. And so it is, I'm not saying no.
Right.
I'm saying,
It has to make sense.
yeah,
Yes,
it has to
I
make
get it.
sense. It
Okay.
does have to make sense. And then the second thing is that when council was discussing it, their discussion was, well, yeah, they don't think that there's anybody, associated with this specifically. And rather than trying to find a name of somebody who, like, for example, there is somebody who has recently died. It hasn't been 2 years, but it will be by the summer. His name is Dave Moyer. He gave decades of his time to city service. Very, somebody we will definitely be naming something after. But he's not necessarily, that place is not necessarily the right one for him either, let alone for the spot itself. And um, the council was discussing wanting it to be more recognizable as a transportation hub rather than as a person, who was not related to that property. So, but if you have someone in mind, and want to, talk about what makes sense there, you're definitely welcome to.
I don't have anyone. right
Okay.
now, but Just wanted
It
to
might
know
come
what's-
up. It might come up.
Oh. Gary's pointing at himself, so maybe.
Um,
We have to kill him though.
and wait a couple of years. Um, let's see. And then, of course, we want to avoid names that are duplicates of existing names. So I tried to think of as many as I could. You probably know more, but yeah, yeah, nothing like that. Not spoons. And then otherwise, just to get started, I laid out some words that identify this place, has some identification of the land area. There may be a lot more. And then also words that denote its use. And I went around and asked other people and just tried to get as many different words as I could.
This list can be added to.
Absolutely. Just a starting point, so we weren't starting from zero necessarily. And with that, I'll just start taking notes.
Great. So I'm sure you've all been jotting down names, right? Do you, should we just start on this side?
Do you want one per person or do you want a whole list?
Ah.
I had time last night and I walked through town on my way here. I'm like, oh, hey.
I think why don't, if anybody who has any names, I think we just throw them all into the middle right now. And then as something, if somebody else says, oh, I like that one, let's just start identifying ones that are sticking.
Right, as a preface, all of mine revolve around outdoor activities or adventure, majority.
Great.
So I have Sisters Adventure Hub, Three Sisters Transit Station, Cascade Meadow Connector, the Elk Ranch being close by, or Patterson's Elk Ranch, Recreation Station, Timber Trail Transit or Mobility Hub. And the Timber Trail is a bike thing that that comes through town. Travelers Rest Stop or Travelers Transit Station. Patchwork Something in honor of quilts, if you want to go with something like that. High Peaks Mobility Hub or Connector, Tree City Transit. Base Camp Moby Hub, which I like the Mobility Hub shortened, Moby Hub. And Western Wonder, as in Wander, WANDER, Connector. That was it. Give me Wonder, WONDER.
So I'm going to just start writing names of things that I hear like more than once. And we'll start with that.
Okay, I only have one.
good.
It's Cascade Crossing Mobility Hub or Transit Center.
I like that one.
Cascade Crossing something.
I heard a couple of key words that I picked up on when you're talking about it.
Right now, Foothill Transportation Hub, the Transit Trailhead, or Ponderosa Transportation Hub.
Y'all come back.
Sure.
Sure.
I was stuck on Gateway, even though there's so many gateways. But it is kind of the gateway as a transportation hub. So I don't know if that it has, in my mind, it doesn't have to be that word, but it could be a word similar that means the same thing. But I think that's important. Is the Labyrinth staying? At one point, we weren't sure, so that's why.
I believe it is. That's the plan at this point in time.
Okay.
I think that the design that I've seen, that is, they're now constructing, avoids the labyrinth.
So are there any that others have said that
Nancy, can you tell us your favorite out of that?
Yeah, or your top three.
Top three. And Rebecca, would you mind actually writing some of them down just so we could reference? them, I
Yeah,
think?
yeah.
Not to make you cramp your hand,
No,
but
I'll do it.
yeah.
Well, I think Sisters Adventure Hub.
I can see your list and I like Cascade Meadow Connector.
That's what I
Yes.
stopped on.
Yeah, I like it.
It's big meadow.
Yeah.
What was after?
Cascade Meadow?
Yep.
Yeah, Connector. And I do kind of like the base camp. Because we want Sisters to be the base for people to start their adventures and spend the night and spend their money.
So base camp.
Mobility Hub or Transit Center or Connector. I don't know what you-
That makes me think of the base camp restaurant over
It
there.
does me too.
Oh, you didn't even think about that.
Yeah, makes me hungry.
Yeah. One's new.
I don't know if that violates
Yeah.
or that policy of being similar to other names.
Yeah.
High camp, you're thinking?
Yeah.
I can't.
Oh, high camp.
It's a
And
little
then
different.
what was yours?
Mine was Cascade Crossing Mobility Hub.
Another word for.
For what?
I like
On Ponderosa Transportation Hub. And then I had Sisters Transit Trailhead. You know.
How, can you see clearly all the mountains from that park?
That was the big thing with the labyrinth.
right?
That you could celebrate the solstice and roam around the labyrinth and gates of the Three Sisters at the stone.
Even with that new building that's 3 stories tall.
That's what I haven't been over there since they started building that new construction over in High Meadow.
I think it's niche enough that you can.
I think it is too, but
And Three Sisters Transit Station, and I'm like,
yeah.
sounds like homeless people or garbage transport.
I'm sorry, you said wayfinding and what was the other? Oh, and you said gateway. Okay. Yeah, I'll just put those up there as other things. Were there others that, you had, Nancy, that?
I did, Tree City Transit, my sister does a Tree City USA and husband for.
Long time, 15 years, 15 plus years.
Yeah.
No, that's me.
Kidding?
There's guys.
Oh, the dark sky. Yeah, that actually popped into my head when doing that dark sky. So that's gonna be hopefully something we'll hear about soon.
Any others? I mean, this is our opportunity to come up with some ideas.
Timber Trail. Yeah.
Timbers.
Put dark sky in there.
Just like
Nancy, to clarify, so there is a trail actually called Timber Trail that,
Yeah, it's a film logging trails
and it originates there.
bikes. And
Cool.
nice, I don't know, but it's, Sisters is the only city.
Cool.
That the Timber Trail comes through.
And does it cross through that location or close?
But that's Casey Mike, and I know it goes out by the airport and it goes across off Pine Street, so I'm assuming it runs in close. But I don't know, should have asked Casey Mike. It's close enough because Sisters is the only city that it runs through in the state.
Yeah, and there's signage for it on the Sisters Tie Trail headed out to Black Butte. And I think it goes through Peterson Ridge probably.
It does too. And the thing is that with the transit hub
To Metwin.
sitting on Barkley, it makes an easy connection to Pine Street, which makes an easy connection back into the National Forest. So it's not unthinkable that that could be a place that someone could stay, leave their car, unload their bike, pick up part of the trail.
Mhm.
So much as our PCT folks come down into town in the summer, stay at the campground for a day or two, shower, clean up, and pick up supplies and go back up on the PCT.
I'm liking, I mean, what rings to me is Cascade Crossing, because that makes a lot of sense.
Sounds like a shopping mall.
It does a little
It
bit.
does, but that's nothing wrong with that. It's just,
Yeah,
I
I'd
also,
rather go to a shopping mall than transportation hub anyway.
that might bring more in.
Just saying.
I also really liked that when you brought it up, Emily, because it reminded me, Rebecca, of how you were sharing how it serves as this focal point to cross over mountains. I think it's evocative. Maybe we could add Cascade Crossing, something at the end
Yes.
to identify.
Throw it up there. Is it up there?
Mobility hub,
Okay.
it's, yeah.
Yeah.
Hard to hear.
Yeah, that's kind of, when it popped into my head, I was thinking about that, right? Because it is the east portal. There is no west portal, but there kind of is. And when I think about the location of that, you're sort of, and then it's the gateway to the eastern part of Oregon.
Cascade Landing, I mean, we could also, still sounds like a shopping mall, but hey.
Sisters View.
Part of the problem is the word Cascade kind of sounds like a shopping mall.
Sisters View. I keep throwing that one out, but Sisters View.
Sister's View.
Yeah, I was just gonna, a couple of suggestions.
It
about
does, doesn't it?
Like Sunset.
So it's a view.
View.
Sister, yeah, sounds like a subdivision. Yes. Yes, Sunset.
But if
Go there
you
to
call
die,
it
yeah.
Sisters View Mobility Hub, like if you add the name that actually sort of says what it is, then does it sound as much like a subdivision?
And the only reason that popped into my head, and I'll be quiet for that, is that was the big thing we heard from the Labyrinth folks when we acquired the property, we were talking about a transit hub, and they showed up very unhappy to think that the Labyrinth might go away as a part of this process. And they all talked about the fact it was one of the only places in the city of Sisters that you could sit on public property and view the mountains.
If we're concerned about the new construction
That's the
blocking.
only place on.
It's one of the few places, yeah, that you can, there's a little public park at the back of Pine Meadow that nobody really knows about, little section of land back in there where that pond is, where you can look and see the mountains across the, but there are some trees and stuff in the way. That's the only place where you have an unobstructed view. And I think that was one of the reasons they got the money from Rand Corporation to build it.
So even if the new construction blocks the view of like the Three Sisters or some of the sisters, you could go with Cascade View and you still get Broken Top
Yeah.
or, you know.
Just Mountain View
Yeah.
in general.
2 of the 3 sisters view.
2 of the 3 sisters.
Cascade View is the name of a mountain biking trail network between here and Redmond, which could be good or it could be too closely associated.
Tree City Transit. It's got a good ring to it. Does not sound like a shopping mall.
TCT. Take the TCT to the PCT. We got a little logo there for Explore Sisters.
Okay, are there any here we want to just eliminate? We're just, okay, we're done with the,
I don't think we can do base camp because of the high camp
okay.
connection.
No, base camp. Agreed. Sorry.
Voice of one
Just
has a lot of power.
dictating.
Apparently.
Boy, you
I
speak with
like it.
authority. Look what happened.
Well, I like it, but when I Google it, I'm gonna end up
Yes.
going to get noodles instead of resting and walking my dog.
And I don't know, have you, some of you folks have not seen the overall plan. But the goal is it will be where intercity buses can stop, where CET can have an actual dedicated bus stop rather than a post in a concrete bucket on the backside of this building.
It's not the only stop in town.
Well, I do too. I mean, yeah, exactly. But, and I think that also there's going to be charging stations. And the idea is there'll be sufficient parking for folks who want to do park and ride. So carpooling and those sorts of things to try to address some of the issues for our citizens that have to travel to work either in another town or who have to travel from another town here to work. Yeah, and there will be, well, it has nothing really to do with this, but one of my requests when I was on the Parks Board and when we started having this discussion, and I've pushed in, and certainly I'm not the only one, would be to have a year-round dump station as a part of this to accommodate our citizens that live in the woods. Also, our folks traveling through in the winter and the summer. I live across from the campground. I don't know how many times in the winter I see people pull up looking to use the dump station. And it's not winterized in such a way that it can be. So the nearest one is in Redmond by the airport. So if you're someone who's living on limited income with a limited mobility vehicle, but you don't want to dump your waste in the woods, that's a good solution.
Kind of like the word landing then for that, because that's where it lands.
Things are landing.
Another round of possibilities. Actually, I tried to get a piece of property over by Bymar, but they have other plans for that, so.
I also wanted to just encourage us to think if someone was pulling this up on Google Maps that was visiting, which of these would be representative of what it actually is and identifiable to someone who didn't
Good point.
know. I don't have more to that thought than just, let's think about it.
This is where we need Eli with his,
So the Ponderosa issue brings up the Ponderosa Lodge, which is
Right.
across the
Mhm.
street.
Right.
So I think we should probably get rid of
I
it
think so
also.
too.
There are a lot of
Confusing.
companies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Ponderosa Heating, yep,
Yeah.
yep.
and Cascade, if for that matter.
True.
Maybe a different tree.
Okay, am I eliminating?
Juniper?
Getting rid of Ponderosa.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I like that one, but I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
What are the other dominant trees in that spot?
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
pondos and there are some junipers, but
Juniper.
we're trying very hard as the hard surfaces go in to take out junipers and not ponderosas.
think we don't want to promote junipers.
No.
Is it important to have sisters in the name?
But I do agree, if you're Googling it and you're looking for a view of the three sisters and there's a view there,
I think
it
there's
might
even a bench.
give you a reason to stop.
Yeah, and there's actually a bench that you can sit on, I believe.
Mhm.
I think the other advantage to using Sisters is it suggests that it's a city project, whereas something like Sisters Adventure Hub could sound like a private entity, whereas Sisters Transit Trail Hub or something to that effect, it does feel like a city-sponsored location, just to me.
Just a quick question. There'll be a chance to add to this list next meeting? Is that what I heard you say?
Yes, there will be a chance. Yeah.
And so one option too, is, you ponder this, is to kind of look at the list of names, take 15 minutes and go out to the site. It's very accessible. The construction that's been done, they've closed down for the winter, and you can kind of walk through and see the footprint and see if any of these feel right for what you might see if you were there. Like the Bi-Mart Access Hub, you know,
Les Schwab.
Les Schwab land.
Really great suggestion. And
But yeah,
I want to clarify too, I mean, it's always just been in my mind, but how many of these you'll want to take to council as recommendations, and whether or not you want to have, if it's two, your first choice, your second choice as a board, or if it's three, ranking them like that.
if you give us 5, we'll talk for 6 hours. We won't come to a conclusion.
Yeah.
How many would you recommend, Gary?
Well, Nancy can help with this too, having served on council, and it's not that different than when she was there. I would say, I would maybe send your top 3 at the most. And your rationale for the ranking of each. And that doesn't mean that you won't have somebody at the council has a different opinion, but that's how I would approach it.
So if we think
Would you agree
about,
with that? Yeah.
if we think about 3, maybe we could whittle this down to 6 for today, or 5, or,
I'd recommend leaving it like that and having folks visit the site, then whittle it down next week.
okay.
What about like
Would-
Sisters Lookout or something?
Yeah, there's another one, yeah.
A little different than View. View, I mean,
And it kind of takes everything to see.
right.
Yeah, I like that. Sisters look out what the.
Well,
Transit Hub.
Didn't you like the Mobi Hub, Mobility Hub? I did too.
Which one?
Mobi Hub, Mobility Hub, instead of putting.
to put mobility, put Moby, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think it's,
It does sound good.
but people of a certain generation might associate it with a musical artist that
Yes.
Yeah,
maybe wouldn't be.
I have a 34-year-old daughter. I know what you're saying.
yeah.
Don't poop.
Google Moby, M-O-B-Y.
His name is
Right.
Moby.
Yeah,
Sorry.
have a list.
That's why I'm on the council, I guess.
older than you.
No,
God.
Yeah, so we can decide on what number that we can end up with today. I definitely want to keep drilling down things we definitely don't want, because there's no
think that's a
reason to
good
keep
idea.
moving on. But then also, to say that at the next meeting, we'll whittle them down, but then also talk about our justifications and how we want to define those for both the public survey and then for council. It might look different, after the public survey comes back. But that'll be a portion of what we do next time too. So we're gonna have to,
So in deleting one more, I would take off dark sky because we're not there yet for the certification. And it might be confusing for people to go, oh, this is where I'm supposed to go. And Sisters to look at the dark skies when they're,
Ah,
it could potentially be a different location for dark sky meeting.
get there and all those trees are there.
And-
you can see the
Right.
sky.
And I also,
Lights.
and if we're still,
Bye, Mark.
I think what we should, I mean, I agree. Um, you know, I like the idea, but it doesn't make sense.
We'll have a
for
big sign at
hub.
either end of the city proclaiming our status once it arrives.
Right. And I question Cascade because there's so many things named Cascade. I think the way we should look at this is the word sisters. Is the town name important? We obviously are a tree city, so we could have a tree. We don't have to. And then obviously the lookout or the view is important. And it's a transportation hub, which we are already including in the end, no matter what, correct? Is that part of the process? Do we have to call it a transit center at the end? I don't know.
Not in those words. You
Okay.
don't have to.
I
but
think that-
I think
I think that if it,
Moby Play.
I believe that there is probably pretty firm support. I'll be careful because I'm not sure. I mean, I think that if you didn't put it in, the council would come up with a term it wanted to have. And that's okay. But if you have a term you like that you think makes sense, I put it in and just see what happens. There's 5 of us and that 4 people could think something different than I do. But I know that one of the things that I read in the document you put out and that was put together by staff and it was put together by consultation was that we probably wanted the term transit hub in there somewhere so that people that were looking for something like that. And there's federal funding, there's funding in there related to a transit hub as well, significant funding. So
Okay.
it may not have to be called a transit hub, but it may have to be called something that is a synonym for that.
yeah, any of these words, I think.
That's my middle school word of the day.
Mobility, transportation.
Would you mind putting point behind lookout?
Ooh.
So it's not like lookout, but you know.
Lookout Point, yes.
Yeah. Lookout.
Sisters Lookout Point.
We could paint a big finger on the driveway.
Or lookout.
Ah,
Exclamation point after lookout.
Yeah. Yeah.
what's another word for point?
That's what they did for lookout and I went down like this.
Because my concern about point is now I'm thinking it's a point of interest on the side of the road, right? Like
Hmm.
we have a lookout point halfway to Bend.
True.
So what's another lookout?
Spike, location, site, area, spot, place.
Spot.
But
Lookout spot.
Lookout corral.
I'm not against it. I'm just looking to avoid the confusion of pulling in there.
I think if you put the word view in front of lookout. So sisters view, lookout point or whatever, or sisters, 3 sisters lookout point or something that connotates the hills, the mountains. You might get away with the point. I know what you're saying.
Is anybody concerned about Sisters View being similar to a street name that we have in town called
Yep.
Sisters View?
Yep. And whenever I hear lookout point, because I'm from the valley, I think of lookout point reservoir outside of Eugene, but that's my problem, not yours.
I think it is, yeah. It'll come up on any searches for that.
Is just having sisters or the 3 sisters imply that there's a view of them enough that you can cut the word view so you don't have that similarity?
I mean, you could say 3 sisters lookout point and that takes the word view out. You know, no matter what you guys folks come up with, you could probably wordsmith enough to find another thing in town that has that word in it. You know, luckily we don't have the Paper Place Gateway, but you know what I mean? It's everybody tries to differentiate their business and their company with a unique term and a name. And so some of these terms are gonna pop up, but I'm with you folks that say certain ones are overused. So Ponderosa is a very good example. Cascade's another one that I think becomes confusing at times. I mean, even 3 sisters, but maybe less so. Because you don't see that too much in Bend. You don't see it too much in Redmond.
So I think, to your point about, is there enough of a view? I think what Gary said about actually going back there now that you have a list. Going, does it feel like
See
I
what-
have a view, you know?
I see what it feels like. And you may come up with something new just by standing there and looking at the information signs and getting a sense of how it's gonna flow. The charging stations for cars will be along, I guess it's, if they've named it or not, it'll be along the 242 that goes by Les Schwab, on the backside of the property. So people actually access that there.
And I think the other good thing to do is to put each of these in a maps program and in Google and in any other, and just see what comes up. Um,
And in the meantime, think of something else too, a measure there. But I think that the first time I walked the property, I had a better appreciation for what it was. This is before we had anything in it. And now that there's actually been some construction that's gone on, and significant amount actually, you can really get a better sense of what it's going to feel like. So I suggest that. You don't have to do it, but if you have a few minutes, especially right now while the sun is out.
Yeah, what,
I did use some AI last night. I put in Western Town, quote, music, arts, whatever. And then I put in transportation hubs. And besides Moby Hub, Rightport came up, Rightport,
right?
P-O-R-T.
Uh-huh.
That might be a good
Port.
portal,
Mm. Mhm.
might be a good thing instead of hub or connector or transit. And just another word to play with in there.
Yeah.
And it's RIDE port.
Yeah.
Does that satisfy the firms with that funding, or would we still need transportation?
Well, it's got ride and port as in transportation.
I think that, I mean, I'm not the person writing the grants, so I haven't seen the language in the grants. You're dealing with the federal government. But I think, I think a ride port could be easily defined you could name it the ride port, and in the pros, you could talk about it being a regional transportation hub with buses, et cetera. So right in the very introduction, you put the word transportation hub in. I think that's how you handle that.
right.
Having been a grant writer, that's the first thing I would do. It would be right there in the first page, the first sentence, the first paragraph.
I feel like
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
have, some key words, and I feel like we should take these keywords as individuals and hopefully go to that location
Mhm.
and come back or even email so we can go into the meeting a little more, one step ahead. Your idea. And I wouldn't have more than 3 as an individual. And actually what I recommend is you have one idea, but maybe 3 versions of the same idea. So it's not, all over the board, basically. Does that seem like a plan that would work?
It's like naming a school
Right.
or building one. I've done both of those.
If someone goes out and comes up with another fabulous idea, do you want them to send it to you ahead of time so it can be dispersed and you can think about it?
I think it should go through Scott, yeah?
Rebecca.
Yeah, it could come to me.
Okay.
And let me clarify, are you suggesting that this, that folks go out, then they email me, staff?
Correct.
And that, those results can be compiled for the next staff report.
Exactly. And
Okay.
then basically you could just do exactly what you're doing now, but
Mhm.
we'll have it much narrowed down. And I feel like we should just all take a picture of this because we can see these words.
Yeah, I can email them
And I
to
think
you
we have a
also.
good idea of where we want to go.
We can all take a picture, but Rebecca will compile this anyway.
Right.
And so she could probably get it out. I'm not going to put you on a timeline tomorrow morning, sometime to each of you in an email.
Mhm.
So if you want something a little less than your camera photo.
I wouldn't cross off the whole thing, but I just cross off the words cascade because I feel like we kind of are in
Is that
agreement that,
Agreed?
but crossing's good, meadow
Yep.
is good,
Yeah, I like
connector
meadow
is
too.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, even
Landing is
sisters
good.
crossing.
Let me
yeah.
just go
So I
through
feel
it.
like we can take all this and there's,
Gateway, yes.
Yes.
Wayfinder, wayfinding, Rideport, Sisters Lookout, Point Transit Hub, Sisters Adventure Hub, Sisters View, Mobility Hub, Cascade, we're taking that out.
Yep.
So Meadow Connector.
Something Meadow
Something else
Connector.
Yeah, Sisters Meadow Connector, who knows?
Sisters-
Like,
Crossing, landing, again, mobility hub.
Place formerly known as Llama.
Trail hub,
Can we,
trailhead.
Sisters Trail, oh, Transit Trailhead, that's kind of fun. Can we find out, can we find out the words that are required to meet that grant? Just so we know what we have to put in
That would
there.
probably be a question for Paul, wouldn't it?
Do you want me to follow up with him?
Because if,
Okay.
It's a good question.
yeah, because if we're going to name it and we know we have to use these words, we want to make sure it flows, right? Like,
Okay,
and what we're stuck with.
Tree City.
It has to fit on a sign smaller than a
For sure.
billboard.
Perfect.
Can we add corral? Matthew, you said corral sort of offhandedly, but I keep coming back to it.
Yeah, that's a great word for it. Corral.
Yeah, but it's very
Round up all
sisters.
the
Yeah,
services
all
there.
the things.
I don't want to make everyone stay super late. So that's why
One way to
I
get
feel
out.
like that we're in
Yeah.
a
Kind of a guy.
space that we
He
can
really was.
continue
Um,
to do this research.
If I could just say one thing, when I email you, I'll probably email you individually, as cumbersome as that is for me. Because I want you to only email back to me and not to the entire group. If you email back to the entire group, you're having a public meeting.
Right.
So, I just want you to be aware of that and think about that. Anytime we're doing business, you don't want to be emailing the entire group.
Right.
And that's why I will email you individually and then you can email me back and
Yep.
I'll keep it separate that way.
And technically these, because they're advertised, these are public
Yeah.
meetings. We could have anybody
Make
from
it a
the
quick
community in
picture.
here.
You can be in it if you want.
But that's a very good point. And sometimes on these committees, folks forget that you want to be, include everyone, so they do reply all, and that is considered to be, yeah, an informal meeting under state law. I don't think you'll get your hand slapped, but we like to stay as clean as we can.
That feel complete for today?
I feel good about it. Does anyone else want to add or have a plan other than this approach?
I don't have a plan, but the last naming item that I can recall was probably 11 years ago.
Liv Clement?
And that was a Songbird Stage in First Street Park. And it was an Eagle Scout project for a high school student. And an artist in town was very adamant that we have to name this. And, here's a vision of a tree and call it this. And so that's what started the dialogue with city council about we need to have a formal process because before that, a park was named after a gentleman. I don't even know if he had passed away, but it created a kerfluffle
Yep.
whatever, an issue for some people in town. So I'm.
Not
back to
everybody is
council. Thank you.
liked as perhaps the individual that the park was named for, or they, whatever, so.
So Songbird Stage to a formal process
It-
and
it-
there.
And just to let you know, this is not unique to Sisters. I was on the Lamb Lane Board of Directors Special District in the Valley with 32 parks and on the board, and naming parks was always controversial, and we finally did exactly the same thing. We came up with a naming convention for what we're gonna do. And I think the last thing we named after someone was the recreation center, which we named after Bob, who's alive, but that's neither here nor there, but then we did the naming convention. We didn't want to have to run over him to name the building after him. But I think that this is something every park district deals with. And it's something that I know the school district deals with in naming buildings as well. Do you give a name like Sisters Elementary School? Safe, or you give it a name like, after some individual or teacher or
Yep.
citizen or a particular view that may or may not be there. I mean, Bend has some of that, and it can get pretty tricky.
All right, well, we have a plan. Let's move on unless you have anything else to add.
No,
Um,
just, should you have any other ideas or anything, just email me and I'll include it in the next
I'll do
packet.
it. I already have one, so I'll do that later. So staff updates.
So I was just going to quickly share a story about a naming project in a place I used to live in. I was there happened before I was there. I think I shared this last time, but it was a new bridge that was being dedicated, and I guess some of the folks didn't like the names that were put out for the vote, so I started a write-in candidate thing, and were able to get it to win. It was James Brown's Soul Center of the Universe Bridge, and it won, and they actually got James Brown to come and dedicate the bridge. And so why
What
stop?
artist do we want?
So let's think of who we could get to come and visit Sisters. So on another note, I just wanted to let the new folks know that I'll be emailing you at some point to get you in to do like a little orientation and kind of talk about the background and some of the documents that kind of we utilize in this position, and some of the background of projects we've worked on in the past and projects coming up, just to get you a little orientation. It'll make a little more sense now that you've attended a meeting, but look out for an email for that. Then our next meeting, I guess, is February 5th. Right, at 4 p.m. Sorry, we didn't tell you about that when you guys were interviewing. We told you it was every other month, but that was a decision that was made at the last meeting. So it'll be February 5th, I think March 5th at 4 p.m. and then April 2nd would be the next meeting. I think after April 2nd, we'll get on the every other month schedule. And then we are working close to putting out an RFP for landscape architects to hire to help us with kind of the visioning for the Northwest Park, kind of the community outreach. And that Northwest Park is the park that's part of Sisters Woodlands. It's kind of at the corner by the roundabout with the Barclay roundabout. That is about 3 acres of land that were deeded, given to the city as part of that process. And through, I guess, the Parks Master Plan and discussions, there's been a vision for that being potentially a multi-use facility. And so this process will kind of further refine what that might be and what kind of community support there would be for that and how it could be funded. So that'll be a big project that the Parks Board will be working on.
It'll be fun.
It'll be fun.
And you'll have everybody in town calling you up and telling you what it should be.
What's
A
that?
swimming pool, an ice rink, a hockey rink,
Cool.
pickleball.
Pickleball. Everything should be a pickleball court.
Yeah. So that's it for me.
Right, other business? Okay, our meeting is adjourned at 5:05. For first one.
One way, like, you slow.